All right. So, some of the things you might be needing to do in your podcast is you might want to get rid of some noise. So, here is my two windows. You won't really need your mix window, which is this for this, but you'll definitely want your edit window. This still applies for GarageBand. I am using Pro Tools in this just because I am faster with that and I'm more comfortable with that. But yeah, um, but basically, what you want to do is you have two options when you get your podcast recording. Because what happens when you record a podcast is that the mic captures as much noise as possible. So, yes, this is the noise that I want from my friend Tanner, who's talking in the microphone, but there is some noise that Andrew is making into his microphone, even though Andrew is mostly speaking into this microphone. Now, to make it sound a little bit cleaner, we go along a path like this, basically go through and edit out all of the audio that is not supposed to be in that microphone. And yes, there might be moments where I need to listen to it, like right here. Let me zoom in. Like right here, I want to make sure I get as close to it as possible. Okay, cool. Now, once I'm done with all that and go through all of this, there is one more thing I need to do. What tends to happen is it's going to sound really empty once I cut out some of this audio. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to move this room tone that I recorded and put it into some spots. So that way I can loop it and make it sound good. Now, you might need to be doing it a little bit differently on GarageBand because GarageBand I don't think is capable of doing crossfades as nicely as Pro Tools does. So I'm going to just move that as close as I can. Great. And I'm going to move it a little bit closer and give it a little bit of a crossfade. Oh, whoops. I don't know what happened. We're just going to click adjust bounds. Okay, cool. So there we go. Now I have my fade, crossfade. And so that way it sounds a lot nicer. Awesome. That sounds pretty clean. So you can do it that way, or you can do another way, which is an option depending on how speedily you're trying to edit, and that is using a noise gate. So I'm going to go ahead and open a noise gate. GarageBand has something similar. I'll show you that. You can watch. I will be making a video soon on how to use dynamic editing in GarageBand specifically because GarageBand mixes a little bit differently. But basically the idea is that I'm going to take off my headphones for this so I can focus on talking. The idea is that when the volume is up to a certain point, I want to hear this microphone. But when it's not, I don't want to hear the microphone. So we're going to put the attack down pretty close because we want it as soon as we hear him speak, not afterwards. And we want it to hold out probably for about 250, 300 seconds. I've heard some people like to, well, not seconds, milliseconds. I've heard some people like to use 400 milliseconds. You might want a little bit of a hold depending on what you need. I've heard that these two need to add up to 400 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But again, just make sure it sounds good. Do what you think it needs to be done. Hold is basically, it's going to stay at that, it's going to stay open for that amount of time. And then release is it's gradually being turned off around that time. So now let us take a look at what the range is. Let's actually keep the range down. I'm not going to mess with that one too much. What we will want to focus on is ratio and threshold. So I'm going to go ahead and look at over where he's speaking. I'm going to find out where he starts to drop. And it looks like he likes to drop right around here. So I'm going to go ahead and go like that and give him a little bit of ratio so it doesn't sound like he's being cut off all the time. And some people like to add a little bit of range. It's an option, but at the same time, I don't think it's needed that much. I'm going to go ahead and take a listen now. I'm going to go ahead and bypass it and just double check to make sure. You might want a smaller ratio depending on what you want. So that is another option. Some people like to use both and automate the threshold or the ratio. And to do that, we go ahead and click here and automate it like so by adding ratio, as well as adding, where is it? Threshold, there it is. And then they'll automate that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm simply going to go ahead and do room tone and use that method, so that way I can be sure it sounds clean. But yeah, basically get rid of the extra noise that is going into the microphone that you do not want. If by chance you didn't record the room tone after the recording or before the recording, which is basically 30 seconds of just the microphone sitting there, of the sound of the room, not anybody speaking, just straight noise, what you can do is I also have made some files on Box, and I'll put them there, and hopefully we can maybe accumulate a few more just to see what sounds better and have lots of options there. But yeah, you have a couple different options on how to do noise gating. It's very similar in GarageBand, except with room tone. What you'll probably want it on a separate track, the room tone from the actual talking, since you have to automate it manually versus doing crossfades, since you can't do crossfades as nicely as Pro Tools. And so, but you can still do the same thing through automation. So yeah, and that's an option. But yeah, go ahead and go through, add your room tone, take out the ugly noise that you don't want, and that is all you need to do.